All right, everybody. Welcome to episode, what is this, 7? It's episode 7 of Erin's Comic Room, The Reboot. And we call it The Reboot because we started on Twitch and then we moved to YouTube. So we started calling it The Reboot when we moved to YouTube. But this is the first episode where we're actually streaming on YouTube and to Twitch. So I'm guessing it's not a reboot anymore. But anyway, I'm Erin. I'm here with Jose. And with our special guest today, we have David Avallone. Is that how you say your name?
That was very good. That's very good.
Is it? Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I've heard Eva say it before, so
that definitely helps.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And you're friends with Eva, so and I've been dying to. I haven't asked her. I've been waiting to ask you. Like, where did you guys meet? You guys are pretty close, aren't you?
You're on Twitter. Just Twitter friends. I can't remember who followed who first. And then we chatted for a little bit. And then she said, "Hey, come on my show." And I was like, "Sure, great."
Which show of hers were you on? You were on an episode of Gals, weren't you?
No, I wasn't actually.
No, I thought you were. I thought you did a solo episode with
Crystal.
With Crystal, yeah, because Crystal was on here 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she was geeking out about talking to you. She said it was just like an absolute pleasure.
That's very nice. I try.
So it's Friday. We do these on Friday because Fridays I get to ask the question, "How was your week?" I like to ask that.
I used to have therapy on Friday afternoons, and I couldn't understand. I was kind of like, how does anybody do this any other day of the week? I really liked and now we're done and we can talk about it. Like, I can't imagine having therapy on Monday and being like, I don't know what we're dealing with. I don't know where we're going from here. Don't talk to me right after the weekend. Talk to me after not that, I've been working from home for the past, 30 years off and on. So the weekend is a fairly abstract step for me.
That's something that I'm adjusting to, working from home and being at home pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
It's jarring from somebody that, I had a full-time job. Like, I was out and about, like, always doing stuff. And the past 3 years, even before pandemic, I kind of shifted over to, work from home. And, it's been, I don't think I'm going back.
I mean, it's funny. We were talking about this in the last podcast I recorded today with Ryland that, for people who are professional writers, it's not that different. It's only like 10% different, but the 10% was the difference between sanity and insanity. Like, we could put up with being at home all the time because every once in a while we went to a convention and saw people and interacted with humans, and you take that away from us. It's a joke I've made a couple of times, but I'm doing 2 podcasts of my own right now. And literally, if you had gone to me in 2019 and said, in 2020, you're going to do 2 podcasts, my answer would have been, so does the world end? Like, how does sort of be to host 2 podcasts? Who has that kind of time? That's crazy. Well,
we all did for a while. Most of us still do. I mean, the world in most places hasn't really gotten back to normal. My city is pretty much fully open now. Unfortunately, I don't really agree with that decision because our numbers are really high. But I mean, it is what it is. We can spend all day talking about. I'm in Philly, so Pennsylvania. Yeah, don't get me started on Pennsylvania.
I'm originally from New Brunswick, so I'm just from up the road from Philly. I spent a lot of my childhood there. New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey. Okay, New Jersey. I was thinking Delaware for some reason, but
no, and not the Canadian province either. No, the city that is pretty much the center point on the railway between.
So, what was your closest city growing up to you? Oh, New York. Probably. Okay.
New York and Philly were both. Philadelphia was about an hour and change, and New York was about 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's about how it was for me where I lived where I grew up. But I didn't come to the city that often until I moved here, and it's a different world. It's definitely a different world. I enjoy going to the park and like sitting down and reading, and you know, it's kind of surreal and all the people around and stuff. It's different than being like out in the middle of nowhere and doing the same.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So did you work on any big projects over the pandemic, like other than your podcast, like your social media stuff?
I worked on right before it started. I had 2 issues of an upcoming comic book series finished that I had written, and it was an Elvira thing. It is an Elvira thing. It's Elvira meets Vincent Price, which hopefully will be out later this summer. And but I had written two issues, and there were 2 more left to write. And about a week after Los Angeles shut down, 2 weeks after, I got the word from Dynamite that maybe I should stop writing for a minute and see what happens with Diamond and see what happens with comic book stores and all that. And luckily, I also have Drawing Blood, which is the project I co-created with Kevin Eastman, which is a Kickstarter thing. So that was already paid for. I had another issue of that to write, so I finished that. And then they reached out to me from Dynamite and said, we want you to do something as a Kickstarter for Elvira. And she wants to talk to you about what kind of story and all that. And we had a great conversation. And I pitched her this post-apocalyptic thing, which became the Omega Ma'am, which we did as a Kickstarter, and it made a ton of money because she has huge fans. I take no credit. I take no credit for any of that. I
believe Jose has a question pertaining to Elvira.
No, sure. that was actually one of my questions. Like, how's it like working with her? Such an iconic figure. Great.
She is the nicest person. She's nice. We have very similar worldviews. Our politics are the same, which is very helpful when I'm doing a whole thing that's a satire of Trump and the COVID response. She was right on the same page with me. I think she may have been the one that suggested that the plot of the Omega Ma'am is that during the pandemic, a bunch of idiots listen to the president of the United States and drink a specific cleaning product called Dr. Sudsy that Trump has told them will cure COVID. And instead it combines with COVID and turns them into orange-skinned zombies. And I think it was Cassandra who said, oh, it should turn their skin orange. That would be really funny. I was like, that's great. So in the beginning, she is very complimentary about my writing. The scripts, I tend to get between 0 and 4 joke suggestions. Like, on page 5, panel 3, I think it would be funny if I said, and she's always very like, you don't have to take them. These are just, but I take them because they're great. Every once in a while, once or twice she suggested something and I've gone, no, that's not what I'm going for there. But mostly her suggestions are fantastic and we use them. And there is something, what's the word I'm looking for? There's something curious about how easy it is for me to slip into the voice of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. We have very little in really common. Cool. I am not a showgirl. I'm married to a semi-retired showgirl, so I've been around that world a lot. My wife, Augusta, used to dance and produce shows as Penny Star Jr. So I've been in that world a lot. I mean, one way or another, I've been in the pretty girl industry since the late 80s and around people like that. So I know that voice pretty well. And the funniest thing, I think, is that I back away from the cheapest, dirtiest joke. And Cassandra goes, oh, no. Do the like in the we said this in an interview somewhere, but in the Omega Ma'am, she's wandering around the first few pages in a hospital gown. And there was a line like, has everybody left me behind? And she's like, now you're going to draw my ass visible in that panel, right? Like, we're going to get the full pun of behind. And I'm like, okay. And I wrote the Vincent Price story has an ancient Egyptian plot to it. And the second or third issue was called Ankhs, the Egyptian cross.
Yeah.
Ankhs for the memories. And she was like, dude, memories, come on. Ankhs for the memories. And I'm like, I thought that was a little cheap, but okay.
Yeah.
You can't argue with her.
That's why you're the icon and I'm just the humble scribe. So yeah.
I always I grew up watching like B horror movies, C, D horror movies, like just the worst horror movies. And I love the format of having somebody host the movie.
Yeah.
That's just something that I fell in love with really early in life. And that's how I first encountered Elvira. She hosts movies. She hosts, I believe she still does specials to this day.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't have a regular weekly show like she used to way, way, way back in the beginning. But she still does the hosting bit. And the hosting bit is, right, exact. Well, like, there's a lot of Mel Brooks. There's
Mel Brooks?
If you read Shape of Elvira, which was our satire of Shape of Water, for the fourth issue, I needed a mad scientist who had something to do with amphibians for plot reasons. And the character is absolutely the Mel Brooks character from the Muppet movie.
That's awesome.
I called him Dr. Kaminsky, which is, I can't remember the name of the doctor. He's Dr. Krassman in the Muppet movie, but Kaminsky is Mel Brooks' real name. Mel Kaminsky.
I didn't know that. I've been a fan of Mel Brooks all my life, pretty much. My grandpa showed my grandfather his favorite movie ever was Blazing Saddles.
Oh, sure.
Now take what you will with that. I've seen that movie 1,000 times.
It's a great movie.
And I've watched all of Mel Brooks movies. My personal favorite would be Spaceballs. Because that's just my personal
generational thing. Yeah.
I was a big Star Wars fan too,
sure.
And it's just the whole thing. But
I have a theory about Blazing Saddles that 100 years in the future, people who don't have a clear grasp of current history will watch Blazing Saddles and go, "Oh, this must have been made in 2009. It's an allegorical representation of the Obama presidency."
No,
I mean, clearly it's about Barack Obama. The black sheriff comes to town to clean up the corrupt white empire, and all of the worst people in the world are against them. And he's got like an old white dude that he hangs out with, who's kind of out to lunch a little bit, but who's secretly really great. Gene Wilder. And I honestly think people are going to watch that movie and go, "Oh, this is about Barack Obama," because what else could this movie be about?
Oh boy,
man, I didn't even think about that, but you're so right.
I completely forgot that Gene Wilder was the white guy in that movie, and I love Gene Wilder.
I watched it again pretty recently, and it's an amazingly, for the time it was made, it presents a view of the world as 100% racist. Like, Gene Wilder is literally the only good white person in the entire movie. Everyone else sort of grudgingly comes around at one point, but there's a scene where a sweet little old lady calls him the N-word to his face, and it's just like, watching it today, it's a gut punch, but you go, there's a reality to this movie. There's an honesty about American culture in that movie that's really something to watch.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it since I was a teenager, so I might want to
go back and give it another look.
And give it a look as an adult, somebody mature that can see it for more than just cheap jokes. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's worth noting that it was co-written by Richard Pryor. Yeah. And he would have starred in it, but I think the studio didn't want to insure a drug addict in the lead role, so they kind of pulled it away from him, which is a pity. Though I do think it works really well. Cleavon Little is so tall and handsome and square-jawed and heroic. I think it works so well. That casting works really well in the story as it is. But
so I have a couple questions. I haven't read much Elvira stuff, and the stuff that I have read, I'm so fuzzy with. So this is a learning experience for me, and it's it feels foreign, but it also feels familiar. You know what I mean? I'm really interested in this Elvira and Vincent Price. I love Vincent Price. How can you not love that band? Like
I was a fan, but I got to say, researching him to do this, because I had to look a little deeper. You know, I'm a big research nut. I research everything that I work on. And researching Price's life and who he was and how he lived, I loved him so much more by the time I was done with it. He was really a committed lover of the arts and a gourmet and kind of out bisexual when no one was really doing that out. It was that kind of thing where like people didn't talk about it, but everybody knew.
Yeah.
Sort of like with Cary Grant in the 30s. And this is something I discovered that just cracked me up. In the 50s or 60s, he made a deal with Sears, the department store Sears, the lame Midwestern, like
every mall,
the most bland American thing ever. He made a deal with them that he was going to go to Europe and buy inexpensive, affordable, original art. And they were going to sell it in Sears, the Vincent Price collection. And we're not talking about like, he managed to pick up like Picasso sketches and you could buy them for $1,000 at Sears in the 60s.
Wow.
And I don't know how long the program lasts, but that cracks me up so much that there was a period you could go into a Sears, you know, walk past the hardware and the Dickies and, you know, the guy making keys and the guy selling tires. And there's the Vincent Price art gallery with a Picasso sketch for $2,000 or whatever. And it's like, what? But yeah, he's a fascinating guy. There's actually
I want to know who was buying them. That's what I want. In the 60s, $1,000, $2,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like that's like a car.
There was it wasn't all name brand artists, but it was, he literally traveled around Europe, bought a metric ton of original art, and it sold in Sears all over the place. And I would love to know where those pieces end up. And, you know, like what suburban living room has this, you know, mid-century modern European art treasures in it from Sears.
They're probably
what if they know what
there.
It is? Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody probably has it in like their bathroom. It doesn't even know what it is.
Yeah. But he was just a really fascinating guy. There's still a Vincent Price art museum in East LA. That's sort of one of the last remaining tributes to his art collection during his lifetime. But yeah, it's fun stuff.
I've always liked him ever since I saw the House on Haunted Hill. That's what it was. Ever since I saw that movie.
That's Elvira's favorite movie. and it figures prominently in Elvira Meets Vincent Price. Without giving anything away, the whole story starts from a poster of the House on Haunted Hill.
So is that out right now? Is that
no? That won't. I don't think that's going to solicit for a couple of months, and then it'll be out probably late summer, early fall.
Wow, you got me excited about like. Okay, so moving on from Vincent Price. You've written Betty Page, right?
Big Betty Page fan.
Jose has a lot to like talk about with that.
Yeah, I love Betty, and that was another one. I did a lot of research on her, and
that was actually my first question. Like you mentioned earlier, you loved doing research, and how was it like doing research for her?
Well, the most crucial thing with Betty, they offered it to me, and I was kind of like, okay, she's not really a comic book character. Dave Stevens very famously drew her into The Rocketeer, but that character wasn't really anything like Betty Page. She was a model, but the personality wasn't like Betty at all. So I sort of didn't know what I was going to do, and I watched a bunch of documentaries, and there's one documentary called Betty Page Reveals All, and that one is narrated by Betty herself. They had like an hour-long audio interview where she told all of her life story, and they sort of cut it up into this movie. And listening to that voice, I thought, I can write her. And in fact, that's why the premise of the whole series is that she secretly worked for the government in the 1950s and wrote a secret diary that's been suppressed. And you're finally reading the diary that she wrote about her experiences as a federal agent. Now, all that is, of course, complete nonsense. But I tried my best to get her voice right. And, again, she's a 27-year-old Southern belle that is as far from who I am as humanly possible. But I know models and I know the period. Like, I don't think I would comfortably write if someone wanted me to write a 19-year-old girl in 2021, I don't even want to do the research that's necessary. I would feel creepy and weird trying to do that. A 27-year-old in 1953, my mother was born in the 30s and my father was born in the 20s. They both spoke in the language of the 1950s, even as I knew them as a little kid. Like, they spoke that language and that slang, and they had that worldview. So I can sort of write Betty Page with my father's voice and my mother's voice in my mind, in terms of that's the voice. And I think one of the great things about writing period stuff in general is that the music of language changes over time. And the fun is writing the language of that time and of that place. And Betty Page was a model in New York City in 1953. My dad was a struggling young novelist in New York City in 1953. So I feel very comfortable in that world. And I have to say, when they came to me they said, Betty Page comic books, we have nothing else to tell you aside from that. She can be any time, any place, any age. Now, her estate had to agree to it. And they, like Elvira, they've been very positive about what I do. I think I have a lot of respect for Betty. And like I said, I always am remembering that woman's voice in that interview. And that voice is her in her 60s or 70s telling 30-year-old stories. But it's I recommend that documentary really highly. If you want to get to really know Betty. So that's who I was trying to write. And on top of that, because it's set in the 50s, the whole series is kind of a tribute to all of the things that are fun about the 1950s.
I had done
the cars.
What's that?
The communist scare.
The cars. Cars.
But the basic story that I use in the first 4 issues, I had done research about this crazy real life story, a true story. There's a TV series now called Strange Angel about Rick. Excuse me, that's my fictional version's name. Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons is one of the guys who founded the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, but he was also involved in the Satanist free love Thelema cult. And he had a best friend who learned about cults from him. And his best friends ran off with his girlfriend and founded Scientology. That's a true story. So when I was looking for some intrigue to get Betty Page hooked up with in the early 50s, I was like, let's do that. I had researched it for a completely different project, but it never went anywhere. I was like, oh, let's have Betty Page working for Jack Parsons at Jet Propulsion Laboratory and getting involved with cults and with what's that called when they reverse engineering flying saucers and government agents and all. So it got me plugged into that crazy 1950s goodness right away.
You're reminding me what you're saying. I'm listening to you and I'm picturing an old black and white movie from the 50s about cult worship that I watched recently this year in 2020, and the name is slipping my mind. I don't know what name it is.
Was it Axon?
I don't think so. It was on Amazon. I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Period is a crazy period. And then when they extended it past 4 issues, The 5th issue is a giant radioactive insects in the desert movie. The 3 issues after that, she goes to the Cannes Film Festival because I like foreign films from the late 50s. So we did that. And then the next series was she goes to England, and the Queen Elizabeth II is kidnapped by a UFO. That's the Princess and the Pinup is that series. And then the last series I did was Betty Page Unbound, which is, as I called it when I was working on it, the Crisis on Infinite Bettys, which is Betty goes through a multiverse, and in every time she steps through a dimensional portal, she's a different Dynamite leading lady. So in the first issue, she's Red Sonja. In the second issue, she's Vampirella. In the third issue, she's Deja Thoris. And the fourth one, I went away from the Dynamite stable, and she's Tinkerbell. And that's one of my favorite things. That issue is Tinkerbell versus Cthulhu, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever written.
I love that. Just that title.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I'm only really familiar with Red Sonja. And a little bit of Vampirella. I like a lot of those Vampirella covers. So sure. I was picking them up for a while.
The first comic I ever wrote was a steampunk Vampirella called Legendary Vampirella. It was a spin-off from a series that Bill Willingham had done. And that was sort of my League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because they gave me a bunch of characters I could work with, and then they took them away at the last minute. They're like, you can't have Flash Gordon, you can't have Ming the Merciless, you can't have this guy. I was like,
no Flash Gordon?
No, because Flash Gordon had been in Bill Willingham series, but I think they had lost the license by that point. So I went to, like with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I went to the public domain and just picked characters out of the public domain. The villain in that story is Kurtz from Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, because it had literally just gone public domain. I was like, that's a great supervillain. We'll use him.
That's awesome. I love when stories are public domain characters. One of my favorites is Oz.
Oh, sure.
Like characters from Oz. I love that. I'm a big fan of Oz.
You must be reading David Pepos's The OZ.
The OZ. I don't.
Oh,
I don't think I've read that. No, I don't think he told me about that.
It's out now. My friend David Pepos writes it. I think the OZ stands for the Occupied Zone, and it's a sci-fi war epic that takes place in Oz.
Why has David not told me about this? He knows I'm an Oz fan.
Yeah, no, it's really great.
Like we literally had him on here. Like
he mentioned.
Did he mention that? I don't think he mentioned that. Did he?
He did. I don't know if he mentioned that book per se, but he did mention his fascination with Oz. I mean, you guys geeked out about it a little bit.
Yeah, but he didn't mention the book.
It was I think he kickstarted it originally.
That's cool. That's cool.
I've seen him promote it on his Twitter though.
I'm gonna ask him about that. I know
down. It's so much fun.
I know we just had Stoney Williams on. He was talking about his Cthulhu Invades Oz.
Nice.
It was an anthology that he worked on with a bunch of different writers with Lovecraft and Oz, and that's just two of my favorite things like come together.
Yeah, for my Lovecraft thing, I did the Tinkerbell issue. I sort of conflate with Neverland with Skull Island. They're all sort of one place. And the pirates and the Lost Boys have sort of formed an alliance against the kaiju that are living there now, which include Cthulhu and Nyarlathotep and Azathoth and Yog-Sothoth.
That's awesome.
Because I'm a big, I enjoy using the Lovecraft characters. But yeah, they wanted me to do this story where Dynamite just wanted a commercial reason to put Betty in costumes of other Dynamite characters. And they said she can be working on a movie, and wearing a costume. I was like, no, that's not fun enough. And I had done a Betty Page Halloween issue where she encountered Yog-Sothoth. There's a great Lovecraft short story called Pickman's Model, about someone's looking at a painting of some disgusting, horrible outer space monster, and the punchline is he sees that it's been painted from a photograph. Like, it's not this guy's imagination. This thing really exists. And when they asked me to do the Halloween issue, the horrible pun of calling the issue Pickman's Supermodel occurred to me. So it's Pickman's model, but Betty Page is Pickman's supermodel. So it's good, clean, wholesome American fun.
That's cool. I'm also seeing a book here on your Amazon page here. Sorry, I'm cheating a little bit.
That's quite all right.
I haven't read much of your stuff. I'm learning though. Every once in a while, I like when somebody comes on here and just like, because now I'm gonna go buy all your books.
Thank you.
But I see the Twilight Zone, like
Twilight Zone: The Shadow. That's a really fun. So they came to me and said, we want to do a crossover of the Twilight Zone, the TV series, and The Shadow, the 1930s pulp adventurer, who's sort of the inspiration for Batman, for want of a better description of him. And we lost Erin for a sec.
I think we lost her, but she might be just headed.
No, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
So the tricky thing is they wanted the crossover, but the Shadow is someone who meets people and judges them, and either they change or he kills them, throws them in jail, whatever. And the Twilight Zone is sort of the abstract version of that, where people encounter the Twilight Zone and their change. And they wanted to do a story where the Shadow himself ends up in the Twilight Zone. And that is kind of a tricky, like, who judges the man who judges everybody? And the answer is Rod Serling. So I did a very meta take on it, where the Shadow the Shadow experiences a world where he's his own alter ego, Lamont Cranston. And it's a very complicated thing. In the original pulps, the Shadow and Lamont Cranston are two very different people, unlike Bruce Wayne and Batman. Imagine if Bruce Wayne was a real guy who sort of resembled Batman, and every once in a while Batman showed up at Bruce Wayne's house and said, "You're staying home tonight. I'm taking your tuxedo and going out with Selena Kyle. I need information on the underworld, and you're going to sit there and you're going to fucking like it." And Bruce Wayne goes, "Okay, man, just don't shoot up the place. I'm good." Yeah. So that's his relationship. So sort of the Shadow sees that he's kind of a dick in the first issue. And then in the second issue, he trades places with Orson Welles, who's about to record a Shadow radio show. So he encounters a world in which he's fictional. Then he finds himself in the body of the man writing the first Shadow novel, which is another way of knowing. These are all various ways of knowing himself.
That's cool.
So,
that's cool.
The theme of it is there's no justice without mercy, because the Shadow is kind of merciless. And I was like, well, if he has to learn a moral Twilight Zone-y lesson, the lesson he should learn is mercy, because he's pretty unforgiving. And the Twilight Zone was a huge influence on me when I was a kid.
Rod Serling is one of my big influences, honestly.
Well, you're gonna love that comic, because the challenge is how to make it the Twilight Zone. I couldn't use Rod Serling as a visual icon. There's nothing in that franchise that makes it a Twilight Zone story except having a twist ending and that narration. Yeah. So what I did to make it feel Twilight Zone-y is all 4 issues open and close with narration. And I wrote it in as good an impression I could do of Rod Serling's authorial voice as humanly possible. And it's a tricky thing because it can turn into parody really easily. You have to do it with an absolutely straight face. But I still I tortured metaphors in a way that I personally would not torture them, but Rod Serling would have absolutely tortured them.
That's fun. That's fun.
Like the issue where he wakes up and he's looking in the mirror and seeing Orson Welles' face, and it's like, on an ordinary day, the average man can expect to recognize the face that he sees in the mirror.
There it is. You got it.
But the Shadow is no ordinary man, and he is having a far from ordinary day. You know, like that, just to get that rhythm and that tone right was such a delightful thing to be able to play with, because I love it so much. And imitating it in a respectful way that fans of the show. And it's the same thing with doing Elvira. I'm not making fun of her. I'm not doing a parody of her. It has to sound like her. Yes. It has to sound like things she would say.
Yes.
So it's that kind of challenge is always great.
That's awesome. I'm you probably guessed a big Twilight Zone fan. I've watched the original 5 seasons like so many times. I'm gonna reserve my opinion for the newer seasons. A lot of the episodes are good. A lot of the episodes are like, what did I just watch?
Here's the thing. There's a really basic thing about the reboot that I do not get. If you love the Twilight Zone, there's one thing you know about the original Twilight Zone. It's that the episodes that are half hour were great. And then they did an hour-long season that was kind of a failed experiment. And then they went back to half hours. The idea that you would reboot Twilight Zone in the present day and go, these are going to be an hour long. It's like you failed the very first test, which is knowing that, no, they're kind of small little jewels, and you let them go on for an hour and the premise generally falls apart.
Yeah,
and you have to,
you're not wrong.
You have to repeat things, and you have to drag things out a little bit. Whereas those originals are 24 minutes long, 25 minutes long, and they're just long enough.
As soon as you like find the twist out, like it's done. It's over.
Yeah, that's the ending.
Yeah, it changes the whole rhythm of them. And it's that thing of like Rod Serling couldn't get the hour-long episodes right and admitted defeat. And it's just wild that then your first choice is, so you're going to be an hour. It's like, no, man, that's not. And I liked some of them, but I kind of, the biggest.
Okay, the first season was good in my mind. I really enjoyed the first season, but a lot of the second season felt really heavy-handed.
Yeah,
like really.
You can. There's what you feel about something on the surface, and there's your own actions. Like, I liked them, but I stopped watching the first season in the middle and never went, oh, I should go back and finish that. Like, sometimes me and my wife will be watching some show on streaming and we're like, okay, we don't need more of this. This is I think 11/23/63. We were like 3 episodes in and went, I don't care. Kennedy's gonna die, right? Yeah, I don't care. I don't care how this ends. I don't care what happens to James Franco. I don't care. But sometimes it's just like you watch a couple of episodes and then no one ever brings up the show again. No one ever says, hey, let's watch something. Okay, let's watch. And it was never, let's go back and finish the Twilight Zone.
Okay,
so will at some point, but
So both of you are older than me. I'm 27. So as I get older, I've noticed that a lot of newer shows I don't really have any interest in them. They don't really catch my attention. I can't sit through a whole season of something anymore, and it's really hard. But I can go back and watch 7 seasons of Seinfeld like nothing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, there's still some really great stuff out there, and there's stuff that takes. There's that thing of like the way we used to watch television. Things would have a little room to breathe. Sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they'd get canceled after 2 episodes. But Seinfeld's a perfect example. It was a huge failure the first 6 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
And then they retooled it a little bit. They tried again. It still got shitty ratings for a pretty long period of time. But they were like, no, but everybody likes this. It's getting great reviews. Let's keep it on. And then it stays on forever. It cracks me up that some people are like, they want everything to be available for binge watching now, and I'm so not that. Give me the once a week. That's fine.
As a comic book fan, I agree with you. Give me my stuff in small little doses, but then some stuff works better.
It depends on the kind of storytelling, I think.
I agree.
Something like Wanda, where it was a mystery. I would say this about Watchmen. I feel bad for people who sit down with the book and read it straight through, because I read it when it was new. And the best part about Watchmen was reading that first issue and talking about it with my comic book friends for a month.
It was monthly, right? So
Yeah.
that's
And then
12
reading the second issue and going, oh, so that's who the comedian is. And like the power of a mystery that took a year to find out the conclusion to. Like, I feel it seems like kind of a bummer. You sit down in one afternoon and find out what the ending is right away.
That sucks.
It wasn't designed for that. I've had friends who read Watchmen in book form and were less blown away by it. And I said, I think it didn't, not thinking about it so hard like we did back in the day. I tell people now when they tell me they're about to read Watchmen for the first time, I'm like, just take a day between the issues. Don't have to take a month. Just like think about, read an issue, wonder what the plot is about, wonder where it's going, think about who could be behind the whole conspiracy, like engage with that for a minute and then move on to the next issue.
So
if I may,
go on,
I'm sorry. I'm just going to kind of like piggyback off that thought. Like that's one of the reasons why I love comics so much is because of the weight. And today there are some comics that take advantage of that weighting. Like Watchmen used it to its full advantage. It hits you hard.
Oh, totally.
There are some comics right now that are really good, but you can tell they're written just to be read straight through, one shot. But then you've got some comics, and I'm going to bring up one example. This one particular work from Tom King, Mr. Miracle. I've read that series a couple times. The first time reading it was, when it came out monthly. And you're right. That especially that first issue, it hits you hard.
Yeah.
But when I tried reading it straight through, it just didn't have the same effect.
Because there's no mystery to why did he try to commit suicide and why is he imagining this? And I have to say, the Fourth World is my favorite comics property, bar none. Like oh yeah. And, I'm against. I've been talking about this a lot recently. I'm against gatekeeping, but there's a lot to be said for exposing people to stuff they don't know. And the reason I discovered the Fourth World is the late 70s. A huge fan of Star Wars when there was one movie, and a huge fan of the new comic that was very influenced by Star Wars, the Micronauts. And which is both of those are very influenced by Fourth World and Jack Kirby. And I had an older friend, about 5 years older than me, who said, let me turn you on to the real shit. Like, it's Darth Vader is nice, but I've got something cooler than Darth Vader to show you. I've got Darth Vader's grandpa to show you. And, he showed me the old Jack Kirby comics, and I went, wow, these are truly amazing, life-changing, and I appreciated that Tom King, most people do not get the Fourth World stuff right. And there's a surrealism to those. Even the original comics are fucking weird. And Darkseid's a poetic weirdo. He's not Baron Karza. He's not Skeletor. He's not, guy shaking fist angrily in every panel. Like, he'll go off for a page and talk philosophy while everybody around him is like, is he gonna kill us, or is he just gonna keep spouting poetry? And that's a fascinating character. And King sort of understands that the new gods work best as metaphors.
Oh boy, I want to geek out right now.
Go ahead.
Go for it. Go for it. That's what we're here.
Okay, so first of all, going back to Watchmen real quick. I have a podcast for anybody that hasn't read Watchmen that you can listen to that kind of helps explain things, from issue to issue, and just kind of like it's a podcast. There's 12 episodes, 12 issues. So you read an issue, you watch, you listen to the episode. So that's the way I enjoyed Watchmen the first time. And that's pretty cool. And I just wanted to let people know the podcast is called 12 Minutes to Midnight, and it's on like every like just search that on your Spotify, iTunes, or whatever. But back to New Gods, we were just geeking out about. Me and Jose were just talking about like our most expensive comics, like in our collections, and that was my crown jewel of my collection is my New Gods one, and it's my crown jewel. I have that entire 11 issue run too. The originals.
I don't think I have all of them. I just reshelved my collection the other day, and I think I have like 5 or 6 of that run and 5 or 6 of the Mr. Miracles. I have a couple of Forever People.
Jack Kirby is just like, when you pick up one of his books and you read one of his books, I feel like you can feel like every drop of sweat that went into that book. You can feel like this man is like putting his life into his words, into the story that he's trying to tell. And especially with his DC stuff, I feel it a lot more.
I agree. 100%.
I feel like we're outliers, but like, I think Stan Lee by himself, I think Jack Kirby by himself without Stan Lee is so superior to Lee Kirby.
I would agree.
I love all of my favorite Jack Kirby stuff is his solo DC stuff. I love Commandy. I love OMAC, the One Man Army Corps. Like, all of those series are great. Devil Dinosaur is nuts.
I was just gonna say Devil Dinosaur.
The Demon is nuts. Like, all of that stuff is just, it's so great. And even like his comic book version of 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of the most insane things anyone has ever put on.
Comic Burrito.
Hi, Comic Burrito. So yeah, and I will say, when I was a kid, his work was a little too stylized for me. Like, it put me off. And now it's like, those are the only old comics I buy. Like, that's the only thing I go through bins looking for is old Jack Kirby stuff from the late 70s.
I can't say no to him.
Every single panel of his deserves to be framed on the wall, just enlarged, framed on the wall.
I won't put my New Gods on the wall because I'm afraid if somebody breaks into my apartment that they're going to steal the comics on my wall, and if they're on my wall, they're the ones that are going to get taken.
Yeah,
I'm paranoid.
Yeah, but it's very beautiful stuff, and for a long time you could only get it in collections in black and white.
Oh my god, I hate it in black and white. I hate it. I have one of those.
Yeah, a friend bought me all the First World books when they came out in black and white, and while I appreciated the gesture, I was like, "This is a travesty. This stuff was not meant to be looked at like this."
Yes, I agree. I have the collection of the New Gods over there, and I ordered a collected version of it, and I got it on eBay for like $6 or whatever. I was like, oh, that's cool. I need one of these. I don't have it in a collected version, and it was the black and white version. I'm like, this just completely ruins it. Like, I literally, if I didn't love comics so much, I would probably throw it away. Because
if you're a fan, have you read they recently collected them. For the longest time, these were the lost comics that I would evangelize to people about, and they would say, I have no idea what you're talking about. DC finally collected the run of Mr. Miracle from right after it got canceled. Like, Kirby, it got canceled. Kirby was off the book. I think he even went back to Marvel. And then a couple of years later, they rebooted the New Gods with Return of the New Gods. They rebooted Mr. Miracle. I don't think they rebooted Forever People. And I asked Jerry Conway about it at a con. I was like, did you do this because of Star Wars? He's like, no, I did because I love the books and I love the characters and I wanted to write them.
Did you do this because of Star Wars?
Well, but it's very, from
operatic,
a corporate standpoint, the thing comes out that's an imitation of the other thing, and you go, hey, wait, we've got a thing where Darth Vader is the father of the hero. We should put that out. But he said he loved the characters. And the Mr. Miracle reboot from that period was Englehart and Rogers, and then it was Steve Gerber and Michael Golden. Like, it was the best teams in comics at the time. And they're really amazing books. And Tom King's Mr. Miracle has a lot of DNA from that run in Mr. Miracle. Because Gerber, very interesting guy, creator of Howard the Duck, among other things. And he was very interested in the idea of the uselessness of the war between Apocalypse and New Genesis, and Mr. Miracle being the guy that can end it by, rather than participating in it as a loyal soldier, but by circumventing it, by being not a part of it, by refusing to fight for New Genesis against Apocalypse or vice versa. So really, philosophically, it's really interesting stuff. And I think for mood, you'd be surprised how much it feels like the Tom King version when you read it. But DC collected it last year. And I think they call it like the Mr. Miracle of Steve Englehart and basing on, are they both Steve Englehart and Steve Gerber? But yeah, I recommend picking that up. To make it a bigger book, they threw in a bunch of crappy Mr. Miracle one-shots and appearances in Brave and Bold and stuff like that. So that's unfortunate. But the run of Mr. Miracle post Kirby is really worth reading if you love those characters.
I'm actually gonna check that out. I've been looking for some more like Kirby-esque stuff, you know.
And I liked Cecil Castellucci's Me Too on Apocalypse.
Female Furies, I love that
series. Female Furies was really good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yes. So usually, like I said at the beginning of the show, usually we go for about an hour. So we're reaching the end, you know, the last 10-15 minutes. So usually in the last 10-15 minutes, me and Jose like to talk about like what's going on in the comic book industry. Sure. Are there any problematic issues going on? Are there any
there
I think maybe first of all, I want to say that I've watched half of the Snyder Cut and I fell asleep. It is an absolute CGI snooze fest, and that's I don't know if I'm gonna finish it. Honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna finish it, and I don't feel bad about that.
You're not missing. I mean, did you see the Whedon cut?
No, I didn't. So. It's not so different. I mean, there's a couple of bad jokes missing and a couple of good jokes missing too. Some of the stuff that I thought was Whedon because it was pretty funny in the original is in that cut, but it's narratively incoherent. It's ugly to look at. Yeah, it looks fake. It looks so fake. I hate it.
And the conception of all the Fourth World stuff is terrible.
I mean, it is fake. Granted, okay, it's a Justice League movie. It is fake, but you know, there's a thing called, you know, practical effects, and I think I'm going to use this as an example, and people are probably going to get so upset with me for this, but I don't care. The new Star Wars movies were the perfect blend of practical and CGI. Yeah. They visually, those movies were perfect. Okay, Justice League is when you use too much CGI. And what's up? I'm 2 hours into the movie, right? And the characters haven't even been in their costumes yet. Like, I'm just seeing Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot. Like, every scene is just another excuse to put Gal Gadot in another outfit. Like she's only been in the Wonder Woman outfit one time on screen for like 3 minutes, and then
and it's just got. You know, I've always said that if I taught a film directing class, I would actually teach Watchmen, the movie, as how a director can screw something up because he has no idea what the source material is about. It looks right. It looks like a Watchmen movie. But Alan Moore is making something about how violence never solved anything, and Snyder thinks violence looks cool. And you
Snyder
can't have it
missed that whole. He missed the whole point of that Watchmen book. Like, the one beautiful thing about Watchmen in the book is that you don't see any blood until the very end, and that's a point that Alan Moore is making, that Dave Gibbons is making. There's no blood in any of the comic book fight scenes because it's all comic booky until it gets real at the end. But in the Snyder version of Watchmen, you see someone's arm get cracked and blood is everywhere, and it's just like you missed the entire point of the story.
Yeah.
As a fan,
you have to know why you're telling the story you're telling and what it's about.
Yeah.
And he just thinks people beating up other people in funny outfits looks cool, and that's not enough of a reason to make a comic book movie.
So here's my
And
thing with Zack Snyder.
If I may make one more little rant here.
Go on.
I hate how he heroized Rorschach in that movie. He
Rorschach's
really
not
put a
the hero.
spotlight on Rorschach and making him look great and everything. But Rorschach is a horrible, fireless person you don't want to root for.
No, he's a racist and a monster.
He's a racist bigot. I mean, that's what I liked about the HBO show. At least they got that part. The HBO show got that right. But
so here's my deal. Okay, here's my deal with Mr. Zack Snyder. Okay, so my favorite directors, and I have my 3 favorite. You can't see. Well, you can see Night of the Living Dead behind me. That's clear as day. But I have my 3 favorite movies on my wall over here: Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, John Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and Ridley Scott's Alien. Okay, so you guys know that Zack Snyder did a reboot of Dawn of the Dead, or like a reimagining of Dawn of the Dead. And that Dawn of the Dead, the original, is my absolute favorite movie. Like the Dead trilogy, like is my favorite thing. Romero is the reason I went to film school. And I think that Zack Snyder ruined Dawn of the Dead. I mean, granted, and I'm going to say James Gunn wrote the reboot of Dawn of the Dead, so I think I can be a little mad at James Gunn too, but I can give a little credit back to James Gunn because he has gone on and done like actual movies with merit, with good merit. And Snyder just seems to be stuck in this cycle of ruining everything. I want to stay away from you the word ruin. I think he gets it wrong.
Yeah. James, and the thing I would say about James Gunn is very funny and has a great sense of humor, and Zack Snyder has never told a joke in his life. Like there's never anything, there's nothing funny. Like it's so
everything's super serious.
It's so dreary. And it's a tricky thing to make movies about people in capes beating each other up and hit the right note of seriousness versus silly. But yeah, he doesn't understand Superman. He doesn't understand really any of those characters terribly well. The one thing I will give him all the credit in the world for is he's very good at casting.
Yeah.
Gal Gadot is great. Henry Cavill is great. I wish someone would make a Superman movie for him.
I have opinions about Gal.
He's good at casting, and he's, like it or not, like when it comes to like a shot, not the whole movie, but just like one single shot, it can look like something out of a comic book.
Yeah. Yeah, but that, again, that's, I remember when the trailer for Watchmen came out and they called it, from visionary director. I'm like, he literally is Xeroxing pages out of Watchmen and showing them to his crew and saying, do this. Like, that is the opposite of a visionary. There's nothing visionary. It's just other people's images being endlessly recycled.
I will never forgive Zack Snyder for what he did to Dawn of the Dead. Never. So that's just like, I hated Zack Snyder from the get-go. So like when hype started surrounding about the Snyder cut, I'm just like, I don't even care. Yeah. Because like I didn't even see the original Justice League because at the time I wasn't really into DC characters. Me being into DC is like a new development, the past 4 years. So I didn't really see those movies, and now that I am watching the Snyder cut, I'm like I said, I'm halfway through it, and I have zero motivation to finish it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. My current favorite, maybe my all-time favorite version of the DC universe is the Harley Quinn sitcom.
That is the best version.
That I've watched like 3 or 4 times.
That is the love letter to DC. That is
my wife and I just watched it straight through the second time.
Oh
and that's a perfect example, by the way. That version of Darkseid, that's Jack Kirby's Darkseid. That Michael Ironside's Darkseid on that show is a poetic weirdo. He's just strange, and that's
they get a lot of the characters right. They get a lot of the characters.
How well they get, and I love Diedrich Bader, and he is my favorite Batman, I think.
I like the drunk and like out of shape and like just totally inept Gordon.
Yeah.
But he just somehow does his job. He somehow makes it by the skin of his teeth.
So
has the best.
it's Chris Maloney playing it.
Yeah.
And I watched the new Law and Order Organized Crime that he stars in, and in the first episode he has the line, "I'm a damn good cop," and I couldn't stop laughing.
I'm a damn good
I was like,
cop. Bam, bam, bam.
After Harley Quinn, how can you let Chris Maloney say the line, "I'm a damn good cop" in a serious show?
I was
Also,
just gonna say this. Bane is probably the
Oh.
best character on this show.
So-
I was born in the
I will
darkness.
explode him.
I'm the shadow
Do I
that
really
conquers
sound like
darkness.
that?
There's 3 characters that show has nailed down perfectly in its own way. One of them is Damian Wayne, Robin. It's
Yeah, that was
I just love everything they do with Damian Wayne. It's not like the comics. But
Sweetie
it's
pie.
King Shark. I just love the take on King Shark as an
Yeah.
I love that
and
too.
then and
then
Bane.
Yeah.
Bane is amazing. Do I sound like that? Yeah, and just Bane being kind of a laughing stock is pretty great. No, and all the voice cast.
Why do I get the folding chair?
Why do I get the folding chair?
I love it.
That's
and,
2 faces. I
and,
thought it was too much of a thinker.
What's funny is I really don't like Kaylee Cuoco on anything, but she's so great in that part. And Lake Bell as Poison Ivy.
Perfect casting, Lake Bell. Perfect.
Is that is so good.
What's his face? I forget his
Right
name. Seinfeld man, Newman. What is his name?
Oh,
Wayne
Jason
Knight.
Alexander.
as,
Wayne Knight. Wayne Knight is the Penguin.
as
I
the
love
Penguin,
that.
Also great casting. To
And
Jason Alexander.
Jason Alexander as Cyborg. Oh man.
Yeah, no, those are all of the voice casting is just absolutely spectacular.
That's cool.
And again, and the conceptions of those characters are right on. Like I really like Batman knowing that he's the straight man surrounded by just a bunch of like that he's actually that Batman is the least weird person Batman hangs out with is funny.
I just
That everyone's just a fucking mess and Batman is like
oh yeah. Can't
So
forget
this
Jim
is
Rash
the cave,
Riddler.
This is the Bat Cave. This is where you fuck the bats, right? Okay. Like he doesn't even say no, I don't. He's just like, okay.
I like when he gets demasked. Scarecrow's just like, oh, we got him. He just takes off the mask, and Joker's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
He's like,
That was
Bruce
really
Wayne.
good. And Raoul from iZombie as Scarecrow is just also all the casting is just really smart. Giancarlo Esposito's Lex Luthor is really smart.
It's just like Jose said, it's just a love letter to DC.
Yeah.
It really is.
And using Kite Man, like making so much of a big deal out of Kite Man.
His nemesis is Condiment King.
And the thing that I love about that show is I'm not a big enough DC nerd to know that both of those guys are those are real characters from the comics. Kite Man. And I love that in the comics, Kite Man's real name is Charlie Brown, which is a little inside joke about Charlie Brown and the kite eating tree and all of that. Like his supervillain origin story is that tree ate his kite all the time when he was a little boy, so he grew up to be Kite Man.
That is also the only time not the only time. That's like the only time they ever did a great adaptation of No Man's Land.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's but that's one of those funny things. It's that I think about this with the Marvel movies all the time, that some of the stuff they've adapted were comics I did not like, and I have enjoyed the movies. Like, I thought Civil War was incredibly tiresome in the comics. I hated it.
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah,
I hated that storyline. But for a 2-hour movie, I thought it was great.
I honestly...
I'm a big Brubaker fan, and I wasn't crazy about the Winter Soldier run in Captain America comics. I thought the movie did it much better. Nice.
What was I just gonna say? Yeah, I wasn't a really big fan of Guardians of the Galaxy or like any of that side of the universe until like I saw the movies, and I was just like, God damn! And James Gunn nailed it.
I have my one major disappointment with the Marvel movies with the MCU is they set up something really beautifully and then they didn't use it, which is Thanos's motivation in the comics is that he's in love with death. When they introduced Kate Blanchett as Hela, I was like, oh, okay. Who wouldn't destroy half the universe for Kate Blanchett?
Yeah.
I get it. It totally makes sense. And then they didn't go that way with it, and they gave him sort of a lame Star Trek villain. They literally recycled Kodos the Executioner's plot motivation from an old Star Trek episode.
Man, I just, as soon as you say that, as soon as anybody ever brings up Thanos and his like love affair with death, I just always think of Deadpool versus Thanos when Deadpool is just like making out with death and being like, oh yeah, you can't get any of this.
Right. Yeah, it's just, that was a funny and interesting character motivation. And I thought when they brought in Kate Blanchett, I literally thought, oh, they're setting up Thanos is in love with the goddess of death and he's trying to please her.
Don't even get me started on Taika Waititi in his movies. I loved Ragnarok. Ragnarok's one of my favorites.
Ragnarok's great.
Yeah.
Going back to the king himself, I think Ragnarok really captured the Kirby Viking cosmos perfectly. That's why
Taika Waititi, he's good at making films. Like he's one of those directors where I would give him a big superhero movie and I would be excited. Like I'm excited for the new Suicide Squad movie. It's my most hyped movie probably that I've hyped up in the past 5 years. Like I'm actually might go to the theaters to see it. I never go to the theaters to see anything.
I go to the theaters. I mean, pre-COVID, I would go to the theaters all the time to see big movies. I would not have gone. You could not have dragged me to see the Snyder Cut in a movie theater.
Give me another year and I might feel a little more comfortable.
Life is too short. And yeah, I love What We Do in the Shadows, and I think the series is really great. I actually think the series is my favorite. I want to watch it again. Are you a big Matt Berry fan? Have you watched all of his other stuff?
No, I haven't, but I do like him.
Toast of London might take a couple of episodes for you to get into it, but it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. And Garth Marenghi's Dark Places is all free on YouTube, and those are all. It's basically a satire of like the Twin Peaks era of sci-fi television, but it's also wrapped around fake director commentary by the guy who made the show.
Oh, that's cool.
Brilliant. It's so funny.
So, guys, we're actually 7 minutes over, but is there anything any of you wanted to say? Is there anything? David, I'm gonna plug your Twitter in.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, my stuff is my website is davidavallonefreelance.com, and there's links there to all of the things. But if you follow me on Twitter, I post all the podcast episodes that I do and all that stuff up there.
Twitter seems to be the new like, hey, here's all my stuff. It's kind of like, it's a billboard. It's a public facing billboard. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird how social media has become that. But
I'm just not getting that many hits on my Friendster anymore. So.
Oh boy. All right. So what's everybody's plan for the weekend?
What is my plan for the weekend? I'm going to storage, which is very exciting. Because I've been, the thing about being trapped home for a year is I finally cleaned my place up and did a bunch of filing, and now a bunch of stuff has to go to storage. But yeah, mostly we'll be, doing still in COVID. I'm getting my second jab next week.
Oh, that's nice. I haven't got my first jab yet because this happened. Well, yes and no, because Philly, they ordered like 100,000. Well, their first like big order of vaccines all ended up being fake. So they had to go and they were behind a little bit because they got fake vaccines or like vaccines that Yeah. It was probably something shady. I mean, the mayor came out and was like, "We're sorry, we messed up." But whatever. But yeah, that's why I haven't got mine yet. I think I'm eligible in 2 weeks. I don't know. I'm young. I don't really go anywhere. I go for walks. I go to the comic store, the bookstore. That's about it.
Yeah.
I got mine my first one a week ago. I was eligible for a couple months because I work for the county. I'm technically considered essential worker. I should have been able to get one a while back, but every time their shots are available, I never got it because it's like a whole bidding war for them. So,
but my second shot, needles.
No. It's like my second shot's at the end of the month, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, mine's next Thursday, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
I don't like needles, so I'm not looking forward to it. So
it's a very, I mean, it's as like needles go, it's a very low impact.
I think I'm gonna get it the same day that I have to do my yearly blood work, so I can just
get it all done.
I hate needles. I'm the person that's just like, as soon as it goes in, I'm on the floor. All right, guys. Well, my weekend, I'm gonna probably just be sitting here. I'm probably gonna be streaming on Twitch this weekend. If you anybody watching wants to see me play in a video game, I don't know if any of my viewers are into video games. I've been playing Nazi games where I kill Nazis. So the best kind.
Nazis is always fun.
Yes. So yeah, I hope you two have a great weekend. David, thank you so much for coming
on.
Oh, my pleasure. And nice to meet you, Jose, and great to see you.
I'm going on Amazon and I'm going to buy all your books right now.
Woo! Thanks.
All right. Well, is there anything you guys want to say? I'll give you one last opportunity. If not, I'm going to end the broadcast.
No, I'm good. I've made all the plugs I need to make.
Awesome.
I'm going to do some updating on my comic review on my blog, so keep a lookout on that for that this weekend.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.